Okay, so get this. We're tackling a topic that might just be the most debated thing in relationships, like ever.
Oh, yeah.
How to split the bills. Yeah, I mean, think about it. 50-50, taking turns, doing that whole proportional thing. It gets
You're
complicated.
not kidding. It's a recipe for some, let's say, interesting conversations.
Totally. And the best part is, this entire deep dive, it's inspired by you, dear listener. You sent us a whole stack of articles on this.
Really a topic you're passionate about.
So we dove in. Relationship advice, expert opinions, even some real-life couple stories. The whole shebang.
The mission, to figure out once and for all if there's actually a best way to split those bills.
Or if it's all just like a choose-your-own-adventure situation.
Well, one thing the articles made super clear is that this whole money thing, it's not just about the money, you know?
Okay, go on.
It's about equality, independence, how couples work together on their finances, which is kind of huge.
And let's be real, it's so different from how things were like a generation ago.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to explain like a proportional split to your grandma. Oh my gosh, right? The look on her face.
But seriously, what even caused this whole shift? Like, why is this even a debate?
Well, the articles pointed to a few things. First off, relationships themselves have changed. Big time.
Yeah, no more 1950s sitcom stuff.
Exactly. Women are way more financially independent now, and there's this huge emphasis on equality, so the whole guy pays for everything thing is, well, outdated. Outdated is putting it mildly. Okay, so then comes the 50-50 split, which on the surface seems pretty fair, right?
Right. Equal contributions, everyone pulls their weight.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good in theory.
And the research actually showed it can be great. Like for some couples, 50-50 is their jam.
Reduces stress, keeps things equal, everyone stays independent.
The articles even had this couple, Emily and Mike. 50-50 is like their secret weapon.
They swear it cut down on their arguments.
So maybe there's something to it. But the articles also mentioned some, let's call them potential hiccups with 50-50.
Ah, yes. Because relationships and money, not always the smoothest mix.
Understatement of the century.
What happens if, say, one person makes way more than the other?
Ooh, good point. Sticking to 50-50 in that situation could get messy.
One article even said it could breed resentment.
Totally. Like imagine one person struggling while the other's off on fancy vacations. Not exactly a recipe for relationship bliss.
Exactly. And then there's the whole saver versus spender thing.
Oh, tell me about it.
If one's always holding back to hit that 50-50 target while the other's, living it up.
Tensions. Go. Rise.
Like a financial seesaw. Gotta have balance or someone's going flying off.
Okay, so maybe 50-50 isn't the end-all be-all. Luckily, you sent articles about other approaches, too.
Yeah, there are options out there.
One that stood out was splitting based on income. Proportional, they called it.
Ah, yes. Like a custom-tailored split. And guess what? They had an example couple for this, too. Sarah and Tom.
Okay, spill the tea. How'd they make it work?
They each put a percentage of their income into a joint account.
So wait, if one person makes more, they chip in more?
Exactly. They said it was a total game changer.
Okay, but hold on. This is where I need a little hand-holding. How do you even figure out those percentages? Is there like a secret formula?
It's actually simpler than you'd think. You take each person's income, divide it by the total household income, and bam, multiply by 100 to get your percentage.
Okay, so like, let's say one person makes 60,000 and the other 40,000.
Total household income is 100,000. The person making 60,000 contributes 60%, the other 40%.
Wait, that actually makes sense.
It's about contributing based on what you can,
Yeah.
not just blindly aiming for equal dollars.
Okay, that's kind of brilliant. But doesn't the higher earner end up paying a lot more in the end?
It's about fairness, right? But fairness redefined. It acknowledges that equal contributions don't always mean equal burden.
Right, like adjusting that seesaw we talked about.
Yeah.
But proportional isn't the only alternative. There was also that whole taking turns thing.
Ah, yes, alternating expenses. You trade off on groceries, bills, date nights, whatever.
That's a financial tag team.
They even had a couple for this one, Rachel and David, big fans of the alternating method.
Said it keeps things fresh, and it's all about teamwork. Okay, so out of all these options, is there one that's like the winner? Or are we all doomed to just argue about money forever?
Here's the thing. The articles were pretty clear. There's no magic formula. It really depends on the couple, their goals, and how they talk about money.
So it really is a choose-your-own-adventure situation.
Exactly. And speaking of adventure, the articles also had some relationship experts chime in on all this. The big names.
Ooh, you mean like the ones whose books are always on everyone's bedside table? Spill a tea, what do they have to say?
Well, Dr. Sue Johnson, She's big on emotionally focused therapy. She had a really interesting take.
Lay it on me.
She said that, yeah, 50-50 sounds nice and equal and all.
What?
It doesn't always consider the emotional side of financial decisions.
What do you mean?
Like, even if the numbers are perfectly split, someone might still feel resentful if their needs aren't being met.
Okay, I can see that. Like, splitting the rent down the middle doesn't mean much if one person feels like they're always sacrificing what they want.
Exactly. And then Dr. Gottman, he's like the king of relationship research. He had a big point too.
Hit me with it.
It's not just about finding the right method. It's how couples communicate about money that matters most.
Okay, so what? Like, having a PowerPoint presentation about our budget.
Not quite. He talked about active listening, using I statements, really trying to get where your partner's coming from.
Active listening. When we're talking bills, I feel like I'm already going to be stressed enough.
It's about more than just hearing the words. It's paying attention to their tone, their body language, the emotions behind it all.
So, like, putting down my phone and actually making eye contact instead of just waiting to argue my point.
Exactly. And then we've got Dr. Esther Perel. She's all about modern love and intimacy.
Ooh la la.
She said something super interesting. Those money talks, they can reveal a lot about the dynamics in a relationship.
Okay, I'm listening.
Like, sometimes those arguments aren't even about the money itself. It could be about control, power, insecurities, all that deeper stuff. For example, one person might be super controlling about finances because they're afraid of getting taken advantage of. The other might be more free spending because of, like, how they grew up with money.
So those money talks are like a window into, well, everything else going on.
Exactly. So approaching those conversations with curiosity, compassion, not judgment, is key.
Got it. So it's less about who pays what, more about understanding each other's, like, whole money mindset.
You got it. It's about using those conversations to connect, build trust, and create a system that actually feels good for both people.
Okay, we've got expert opinions, real life, couple examples, a whole lot to think about. But those articles you sent, they had some stats too, right? Like, how are couples actually splitting bills these days?
This is where it gets interesting. The research said that while 40% of couples still do the 50-50 thing.
So the classic approach is still going strong.
It is, but the majority are branching out. 30% use a proportional split based on income.
No way, that many.
Yep. 20% prefer alternating expenses.
Wow, so there's really no one-size-fits-all here.
And the remaining 10%, they've come up with their own unique systems.
Look at them, trailblazing their way to financial harmony.
It's pretty cool to see, honestly. Couples realizing there's no rule book. It's about finding what works for them.
Love that. But before we get too excited, the articles did mention something about, like, cultural and societal stuff impacting these decisions too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Things like how we were raised, cultural norms, even our socioeconomic background.
It's like those factors add a whole other layer to this whole bill-splitting puzzle.
They do. And they can lead to misunderstandings if we're not careful.
Yeah.
Like, in some cultures, it's still super traditional for the guy to be the main provider.
While in others, it's all about both partners being financially independent.
Exactly. So, yeah, those external factors play a role for sure.
So it's not just about figuring out who pays for what. It's about understanding where your partner's coming from, their whole background with money.
You got it. Recognizing that those money conversations are often tied to deeper values.
All right, so it's pretty clear there's way more to this bill-splitting thing than meets the eye.
Totally. It's about communication, compromise, seeing those money talks as a way to actually strengthen the relationship.
Well said. So those couples from the articles, Emily and Mike with their 50-50, Sarah and Tom doing proportional, Rachel and David alternating, what can we learn from them?
I think their stories show the importance of flexibility and open communication. Each couple found what worked for them, and they were willing to adapt as things changed.
So it's less about finding the perfect answer right away, more about being open to, like, evolving as the relationship evolves.
Exactly, and I think that's a pretty powerful message no matter how you choose to split those bills.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, but before we let you go, I want to leave our listener with something to ponder. We've talked methods, but how would you suggest someone approach this whole bill-splitting convo with their partner? Like, how do you make sure both people feel good about it?
That's a great question. I think, first off, remember that money can be a super sensitive topic. There's often a lot of baggage that comes with it.
Yeah, for sure.
So go into it with curiosity, empathy, not judgment.
So it's about creating a safe space where both people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. And remember, the goal isn't just to divide expenses. It's to create a financial partnership that works for both of you.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about finding what works best for your relationship. So it really is a choose your own adventure. But speaking of adventures, those articles you sent also had some, big name relationship experts weighing in.
Oh, yeah, those relationship gurus always have some wisdom to drop.
Exactly. So spill it, what they have to say about this whole bill splitting thing.
Well, Dr. Sue Johnson, the emotionally focused therapy expert, she had a point that really stuck with me.
Okay, I'm all ears.
She said that while 50-50 might sound appealing, because it seems equal on the surface.
Right, equal contributions, all that.
Yeah, but it doesn't always account for the, emotional impact of money decisions.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Even if you're splitting things perfectly down the middle, one person might still end up feeling resentful if their needs aren't being considered.
Oh, okay. I can see that. Just because you're splitting the rent doesn't mean one person isn't, constantly sacrificing other things they want.
Exactly. And then you've got Dr. Gottman. He spent, decades researching what makes relationships work.
Oh, yeah, he's like the relationship whisperer or something.
Right. And his big thing was that it's not just about finding the right method, it's about how couples communicate about money that matters most.
Okay, so communication is key. Groundbreaking, I know.
But hear me out. He talked about, really active listening, using I statements to express your needs, actually trying to understand your partner's perspective.
So it's not just okay, here's the budget, let's argue.
Not quite. It's about going deeper.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And then there's Dr. Esther Perel, the one who writes all those books about modern love and intimacy.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
She had this really interesting take on how money conversations can actually reveal a lot about the dynamics within a relationship.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
She said that sometimes arguments about money aren't even really about the money itself,
Okay, do what?
They might actually be about deeper stuff, like power dynamics, control issues, or even insecurities.
Whoa, that's getting deep.
Right. One partner might be super controlling with finances because they're afraid of being taken advantage of, while the other might be more carefree with spending because of how they grew up around money.
So it's those money talks can be a window into all sorts of other stuff that's going on.
Exactly, which is why it's so important to approach those conversations with curiosity and compassion rather than judgment or blame.
So it's less about you did this wrong, more about trying to understand where your partner's coming from. Okay, so we've got expert opinions, real-life couple examples, a whole lot to digest. But those articles you sent, they also had some statistics about how couples are actually splitting bills these days, right? What did those numbers say?
This is where it gets interesting. The research showed that, 40% of couples still stick with that traditional 50-50 split.
So the classic approach is still holding strong.
It is, but the majority are actually branching out. 30% use a proportional split based on their income.
Wow, really? That many?
Yep. And 20% prefer to alternate expenses like we talked about earlier.
So it really is all over the map.
And get this, the remaining 10%. They've come up with their own totally unique systems that work for them.
Good for them, figuring out what works best for their situation.
It's pretty awesome to see, honestly. It shows that couples are realizing there's no right way to do things. It's about finding what works for them.
So we're ditching the rule book and embracing the do what feels right approach.
Exactly. But before we get too carried away with all this freedom, the articles did mention that, cultural and societal factors play a role too, right?
Oh, right. It's not just about what works for the couple, it's about the context they're in.
Exactly. Things like how we were raised, our cultural norms, even our socioeconomic background, all that can influence how we view money.
It's like adding another piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, and it can sometimes lead to misunderstandings or even conflict if it's not acknowledged.
So being aware of those external factors is important.
For sure. In some cultures, it's still very traditional for the man to be the primary breadwinner.
While in others, there's a much stronger emphasis on financial independence for both partners.
Exactly. So yeah, those external factors definitely add another layer to this whole conversation.
So it's not just about figuring out who pays for what. It's also about understanding where your partner's coming from, their whole background with money.
Absolutely. Recognizing that those financial conversations are often intertwined with deeper cultural and personal values.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. It's clear that this whole bill splitting thing is about way more than just dividing expenses.
Right. It's about communication, compromise, and using those money talks as an opportunity to strengthen the relationship.
Well said. Now, we talked about those real-life couples from the articles, Emily and Mike with their 50-50 split, Sarah and Tom doing proportional, Rachel and David alternating. What do you think we can learn from their experiences?
I think their stories really highlight the importance of flexibility and, like, truly open communication. Each of those couples found a system that worked for their specific needs and preferences, and they were willing to adapt as those needs changed.
So it's not about finding the perfect solution right away. It's about being willing to evolve and communicate as the relationship grows and changes.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful message, no matter how you choose to approach those bills.
It sounds like the big takeaway is there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to this whole bill splitting thing.
Yeah, the articles were pretty clear about that. It's all about finding what works best for the specific couple and being open to, tweaking things as needed.
Makes sense. But before we let you go, I want to leave our listener with something to think about. We've explored all these different methods, but how would you suggest someone actually approach this conversation with their partner? Like, how do you make sure both people feel heard and, respected when it comes to money?
That's such a good question. I think first and foremost, just remember that money can be a really loaded topic for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of emotions tied up in there.
So go into the conversation with that in mind. Approach it with curiosity, with empathy, definitely not with judgment.
So, like, creating a safe space where both people feel comfortable actually sharing their thoughts and feelings?
Exactly. And remember, the goal isn't just about dividing expenses. It's about creating a financial partnership that truly works for both of you.
I love that. That's a great point to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought as you navigate this whole bill splitting conversation with your partner. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about finding what works best for your unique relationship. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.